We finished running the tests.
Global warming is going to strike 2 days before the day after tomorrow.
Oh my god. That's today.
Hey guys, James here again with another video, and today I want to talk about Civ 6's Apocalypse mode, which was introduced as part of the Maya and Grand Columbia pack. This one's for all 10 of you who love to play at max disaster intensity.
There are dozens of us. Dozens!
I'm just playing. I actually like disasters, and after revisiting the mode again, I found that I liked it way more than I initially did at release, even if there are some understandable annoyances. Real quick, if you're not familiar with how disasters work, check out my Gathering Storm guide for more information, and if you find this or any of my other videos useful, please consider clicking some of those buttons. And now, without further ado, let's dive into this. Apocalypse mode ups the ante on disasters, setting your game to level 4 Hyperreal Intensity. This causes more volcanoes to be active and for them to have a larger eruption range. All base weather mechanics from Gathering Storm also become more frequent and destructive. You're going to be seeing record-setting flood after record-setting flood, so be ready to make a lot of builders. Not only that, but climate change will automatically start at phase 1, which, in conjunction with the other new mechanics, causes flooding and desertification to occur notably quicker. More on that in a bit. One of the main additions the mode adds is the Soothsayer unit, who are harbingers of the coming doom.
Tonight at 11.
Doom!
Soothsayers are a support class unit which become available immediately at the start of the game. They can be purchased in any of your cities for 100 faith, with this cost increasing by an additional 100 for each Soothsayer you create. Before I dive too far into the mechanics, I do want to mention that I love the Soothsayers from an artistic design standpoint. I like how menacing they look and how they're unlike any other unit in the game, really. I also love the dissonant tones and vocals that play when you select and move them around. Soothsayers start off with 2 charges which you can use on their Cause Disaster ability. This will start a natural disaster based on the tile the Sayer is on, while also producing 50 CO2 as a byproduct. As I'm wont to do, I went ahead and tried testing out how this ability works, using it on different combinations of tiles I could think of. Here's what I learned. Using your Soothsayer on desert terrain tiles can create dust storms, and similarly, tundra and snow terrain tiles are able to be used to make blizzards. A bit disappointingly, however, grasslands and plains tiles do not allow you to create tornadoes, and water tiles do not allow you to create hurricanes. I understand why they did this, but it's still a little bit sad. Tiles with floodplains allow you to cause river floods, and woods and rainforests allow you to cause forest fires. Of course, being adjacent to a volcano allows you to cause a volcanic eruption. I wasn't able to find a way to create droughts or meteors. If you've experienced that with a Soothsayer, definitely let me know. If your Soothsayer is on a tile with more than one of the features I mentioned before, such as these desert floodplains adjacent to a volcano, then a random possible disaster is selected. A few other things to note about the ability. So first, according to the Civ 6 wiki, only forest fires caused by the ability will fertilize tiles. However, based on my testing, it does seem that dust storms and blizzards have a chance of fertilizing tiles, while eruptions and floods don't. Regardless, with phase 4 of climate change, all disasters stop providing fertility bonuses, and by phase 5, fertility can actually be removed by storms and your Soothsayers. Also important to note, the ability can't be used in another Civ's territory unless you're at war with them. Finally, these created disasters, and disasters in general, do not affect Soothsayers, but they will still damage your other units. With this ability, Soothsayers have an interesting dynamic. While the ability may not be all that great during times of peace, I could see some value in using it to boost your yields with forest fires. During war, however, they could form an interesting piece in your arsenal. You could almost use them as an initiator, diving in to get the enemy units or city in a weakened state.
Oh, this could be a total disaster!
It may not be something you'll be able to do too often though, because 1, damage you can do is dependent on the terrain in their lands, and 2, you'll likely need to escort your Soothsayers, putting your other units in range of danger. Soothsayers have another ability which allows them to sacrifice friendly military units to earn score for the Appease the Gods competition. The Appease the Gods competition is a special competition which occurs every few ages. In order to appease the gods, you have to use the Soothsayer's sacrifice ability on a military unit adjacent to an active volcano. This presumably tosses the unit into the lava, deletes them, and adds their combat strength to your score. This ability also produces 30 CO2 as a byproduct. The competition is short compared to others, lasting only 15 turns. A few things to note here. As I mentioned before, you can only sacrifice military units, but naval and flying units are actually not eligible to be sacrificed. It's also important to note it's the unit's melee combat strength which is added to your score, so ranged and siege units naturally aren't going to be as valuable as sacrifices. I went ahead and tested units out and threw together this table with the ratios of combat strength versus base gold and production cost to give you a sense of which units are the most valuable sacrifices. Based on this testing, I think there's 2 main things to point out. First is that earlier age units tend to provide the best bang for your buck, although since they have lower overall strength, it will mean you'll need to sacrifice more of them to match the raw output from later tier units. Additionally, as expected, melee units on average have the best value, with cavalry and anti-cavalry units being decent as well. Also important to note is that combat bonuses such as from support units, great generals, and promotions do not seem to be added onto this score, as those bonuses are only applied when engaging in combat and do not affect the unit's base combat strength itself. Corps and armies will provide additional strength, but this is generally not advisable as multiple individual units will provide more score than their combined versions. At the end of the competition, rewards are given out. If you're in the top half of scorers, you'll be a bronze finalist, granting you a whopping 2 faith per turn, which I feel like is kinda weak, especially considering how much in gold or production you might have needed to sacrifice to get there.
You have just given me my $1 million!
Huh, great. What do I win?
Nothing! Now get out!
If you're among the top 25% of scorers, you'll land in silver tier, granting the same +2 faith per turn, as well as 1 random promotion for all your existing and future Soothsayers. Here are the possible promotions you can get for your Soothsayers. Incantation grants your Sayers an additional charge, while also giving them a passive which grants adjacent units +5 combat strength. This bonus does not stack with multiple Soothsayers. Inquisitor grants them additional charge, while also giving them stealth similar to submarines, where they're only revealed by adjacent enemies. This can be useful to help prevent opponents from taking them out too early. Plaguebearer grants an additional charge, and also makes it so that adjacent cities are besieged, which I think is a pretty cool idea, and I can see it being useful especially if you go range unit heavy. Messenger grants an additional charge, as well as an additional +2 movement, which can be pretty nice since Soothsayers are a little bit slow naturally. And finally, Zealot provides your Soothsayers with 2 additional charges, but no other effects. All your Soothsayers will get the same 1 promotion per competition, and the competition occurs multiple times through a game too, so you can potentially get more than 1 promotion. If you're the competition winner, you'll get all the bonuses from the previous tiers, as well as a free Soothsayer unit. Because of this reward structure, I actually feel like winning the competition isn't absolutely necessary, and rather, if you do choose to participate, I think you'll want to aim to get silver tier at least. The increased CO2 output from Soothsayers is one of the major factors which contributes to the increased rate of climate change, and when you hit phase 7 of climate change, you'll trigger the Apocalypse phase. The Apocalypse phase does a couple things. First, it gives your game this red tint and screen effects that remind me of falling ash, warning you that the end is nigh. Normal disaster types like storms, volcanoes, and floods seem to stop almost completely. Instead though, during the apocalypse, you're introduced to 2 new types of disasters which are unique to the mode. First, you'll have comets crashing into the map almost every turn. When the comet hits a tile, it will then create a 4-tile diamond-shaped hole in the earth, making each of those tiles unworkable and impassable. If the comet directly strikes a city center, it will result in a single tile impact zone, but it will wipe out the entire city, including improvements, districts, you name it. If a comet hits a non-city center tile, but the city center is one of the tiles in the diamond impact zone, then, similarly, the city will be leveled. These comet strikes are scary, capable of destroying everything. Giant death robots, great people, wonders, terrain features including mountains, and even natural wonders. Here, for example, a comet destroyed 3 of my Chocolate Hills tiles, and while I still technically have 1 Chocolate Hill, much to my dismay, it no longer counted as a natural wonder. You can even lose your capital to comets, and this actually will change the requirements for domination victories, which only require original capitals to be captured. In this game, I won a random domination victory because Canada's capital was taken out. If you aren't seeing a comet on a turn, then chances are you're going to be seeing a solar flare instead. When this happens, you'll see this Aurora Borealis looking effect covering the map.
Aurora Borealis! At this time of year!
Solar flares are a global disaster capable of shutting down everything. When they occur, they can pillage or destroy a number of buildings, including power plants, power-providing tile improvements, and campus, industrial zone, aerodrome, and spaceport buildings. They also have a chance of damaging or even destroying late-game units, such as giant death robots, final-tier military units, and even rock bands, but nothing will stop these guys from being rock stars, outside of, creative differences. Solar flares can actually happen earlier in the game, but they are pretty rare. This last phase can be chaotic, as one properly placed comet can completely change the situation you find yourself in. This can be pretty intense, and you might find yourself praying to the gods to forgive your grievances, which I think is very appropriate for the mode. It does leave some of the endgame to luck, but with how often the strikes occur, I don't think anyone makes it out unscathed. It can be pretty tense and sets an eventual end point to the game. Maybe you win before the world ends, maybe you're Queen of the Ashes, or maybe
you die.
So I think that's most of the mechanics the mode adds. Next, I just want to talk about some general thoughts around the mode. First, I think the mode actually doesn't change much for maybe like 90% of the game. Creating Soothsayers feels pretty optional to me. They're fun, and if you're playing the mode, you might as well give them a try, but I don't really find them necessary to actually winning. In fact, if you find yourself behind, it may be against your interest to use Soothsayers. Even if you're ahead, causing the apocalypse can be a risk with the random comment strikes, but if you're like me,
some men just want to watch the world burn.
If you do decide to use Soothsayers and compete in appeasing the gods, then I feel like it makes war an interesting balancing act. Do you sacrifice units to gain the favor of the gods, or do you take advantage of the smaller armies of everyone else and try to dominate the world?
Some of you may die, but it's a sacrifice I am willing to make.
I just wish that winning the competition had a bigger effect on the final game. It feels pretty inconsequential, and maybe it would have been nice to get better RNG during the apocalypse if you were a top appeaser. I can understand people not liking the randomness of them, but I did find them quite fun personally. A couple of well-placed comments can completely swing the balance of things and change the landscape in just about every win condition. Science victories seem to be a consistent option to go for as they have a finite endpoint. However, science victory buildings do seem to be the target of solar flares, so expect your endgame to get disrupted a lot. I personally find Apocalypse mode a lot of fun, and even though I know a lot of people aren't fans of disasters, I did find the endgame quite refreshing and a nice change of pace from usual. It's not a mode I'm going to be playing every single time, but I do find it a lot of fun. That's about everything I had this time. If you've made it this far, I just want to say I appreciate you and hope you'll consider clicking some of those buttons. And as usual, I hope you have a great rest of your day. Peace.